Okay, we are right at 2, so let's get started. So I'm Arnulfo Garza. I work for Congressman Veasey. A lot of the work that I do is part field rep, so that means attending events when he's in the district, making sure that we're engaged as an office. And then the other part of that is the grant specialist, and part of that is connecting you all to different agencies or entities within the federal government when it comes to grants. So if you have questions on grants, make sure that you email me. I think most of you all have my information. And I'm just getting started with a lot of this. So there's still some that I need to learn, but for the most part, we do all we can to make sure that we connect you to the right folks. So we have a great panel today, and I am really glad for them being able to join us. So I'm going to introduce you all to our district director, who has a couple of announcements as we get started. Her name is Melissa Alfaro.
My name is Melissa Alfaro. I'm the district director for Congressman Marc Veasey. I oversee his Fort Worth and his Dallas district office. I'm excited for this because I know that a lot of you are eager to find ways to fund your projects. One thing that I wanted to touch on is we get a lot of questions about community funding projects, or earmarks, as you might know it. Part of the reason why we wanted to start with a virtual grant session on the arts and humanities is because, as you know, or maybe you don't know, last community funding project cycle, they took away the ability for the U.S. House to request funding for museums and art projects. And so I know a lot of people were banking on applying for those because I know we've done it in the past, but Republican leadership took away our ability to do that this past year. We don't know if they're going to do that again this year, but we anticipate that that probably will be the case. So as a result, we wanted to find other ways to inform you about funding for the arts and the humanities, and anything that might fall under those umbrellas. Our guests will go more into what that covers. But for now, this is kind of how we're supplementing those requests for earmarks for museums, for art projects, and the like. So if you have any questions about community funding project, feel free to reach out to me. I will drop my email in the chat box. The other thing I handle is a congressman's calendar. So if you have any events that you'd like for him to come to and speak at, we'll try to get him there. If he can't go, we like to send field representatives in his place to make sure we have a presence. But feel free to reach out with any of your needs, and we'll try to point you in the right direction. All right, thanks so much.
So the congressman usually tries to make sure that he gives the introduction for any event that we have in the district. He unfortunately couldn't be here with us for this one, but he left a video, and let me play that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Congressman Marc Veasey, and proud to welcome each and every one of you to today's virtual grant seminar. During today's seminar, we will feature experts from the arts and humanities who will help nonprofits and local entities learn how to apply for grants to support their community-based projects in the arts. I want to give a very big thanks to our special guest experts: Ben Kessler, Director of Congressional Affairs at the National Endowment for the Arts; Allison Scher, who is the Director of Congressional Affairs at the National Endowment for the Humanities; and Gary Gibbs, who's the Executive Director of the Texas Commission on the Arts. Thank you for joining us today to give guests at our workshop advice and guidance on topics such as creating a budget, writing a proposal, capacity building, creating organizational structure, identifying funding opportunities, and more. Once again, thank you for joining me today and for the work all of you do every day to better our community. With that, I'm going to hand it over to the experts.
Okay, so we really do want to thank you, Ben, Allison, and Gary, for joining us today. And I'm going to let Ben get us started.
Thanks so much, Arnulfo. And if you won't mind just sharing the slides if possible. And just while we wait on that, just really grateful to Congressman Veasey for all he does for arts and culture in the district, in Texas, and across the country. And thank you again, Arnulfo and Melissa, for bringing us together today. The goal really from the NEA perspective, and I know my colleagues as well, is just to take a deep dive into our funding opportunities, but really to demystify what our grant application process is all about. Along the way, we'll see some organizations from your community who have received NEA grants recently. But really, whether you're a seasoned grant writer or applying with us for the first time, regardless of the size of your organization, we want you to leave this meeting with knowing that an NEA grant is really within your reach and that you have the technical assistance tools you need when applying with us. And also, please know that this is the beginning of a conversation. We want to stay in touch. So whether you're communicating with us through the Congressman's office or you want to reach out directly, I'll put my email address in the chat. So if there's a question that comes up later, don't feel like you missed an opportunity. We really do want to hear from you. So the NEA chair, Maria Rosario Jackson, has really implored us to continue to strengthen our work in communities across the country. And it's really why I'm excited to be joining this conversation today. And since you all are here, I trust you know a little bit about the National Endowment for the Arts, but just a quick word about who we are. The NEA is a federal agency and the largest funder of the arts and arts education in communities nationwide. And we're a catalyst of public and private support for the arts as well. So with support from Congress and arts champions like Congressman Veasey, the NEA is able to fund organizations directly at the federal level and in partnership with the 6 regional arts organizations and 56 state and jurisdictional arts agencies, as well as at the local level. We couldn't do this work without those who have the greatest knowledge and proximity to their communities. And that's why 40% of all of our grant-making dollars flow to the regional arts organizations and state arts agencies. When you're considering applying for federal funding, take a look at the opportunities available with the Texas State Commission on the Arts, and we really do sincerely hope you'll consider applying at every level if that's right for your organization. So this is just a visualization to emphasize what I just shared. Again, 40% of all of our grant-making dollars flow through those regional arts organizations, as well as at the state level, and you'll be hearing more about the opportunities at the state level in just a moment. Just really glad that you'll be able to hear again about the diverse opportunities you have to receive federal funding. So our funding supports arts projects. On the left side of the screen, you'll see the types of organizations that are eligible to apply for funding. Eligibility is open to tax-exempt organizations, including federally registered 501c3 nonprofits, units of state or local government, including local arts agencies and educational institutions, federally recognized tribal communities and tribes. And it's important to note that for K through 12 schools, school districts are eligible to apply for funding, but not individual schools themselves. On the right side of the screen, you'll see examples of what we're not able to fund, which includes general operating support, individual artists with the exception of our fellowships in literature and our 2 honorific programs, commercial activities, as well as fiscal sponsors. And the full list of what we are able to fund and not able to fund is available on our website at arts.gov. So these are the different funding categories offered by the NEA. We have funding opportunities for organizations that include grants for arts projects, Challenge America, Our Town, and research grants. These are the largest grants that we offer, and nonprofit organizations reap the bulk of our funding through these programs. Grants for individuals, once again, is limited to our literary fellowships and our recognition for jazz artists through the NEA Jazz Masters program, and folk and traditional arts through our National Heritage Fellowship program. Generally, you can submit 1 application per year per organization. However, there are some exceptions to that rule. So just make sure that you check at arts.gov if you have any questions or need additional clarity. So the Challenge America program, we like to think of as an entry point both to the NEA and applying for federal funds. We say that because the application process is a bit less burdensome than the rest of our applications. It's a bit shorter. We ramp up technical assistance around these deadlines. And in order to be eligible, you must not have been funded by any other NEA program within the last 3 years. Challenge America is designed to support small organizations to extend the reach of the arts to populations that are underserved. All grantees must address how their organization or audience has been underserved. This is defined in our legislation by Congress, as well as agency policy, and generally refers to those whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited by geography, ethnicity, economics, or disability. All awards in this category are $10,000 and require a one-to-one non-federal cost share match. I should say just a note about the cost share match. If you have any questions or you feel like the match requirement is a barrier to entry, that's a great reason to get in touch. as the match requirement can be generated from various sources, in-kind donations, ticket sales, and the like. So if you have any questions, great reason to get in touch with NEA staff. The Challenge America program, as I mentioned, includes an abbreviated application process and a robust technical assistance calendar, and the deadline is typically in April of each year. The Our Town program provides support for creative placemaking. If you're unfamiliar with that term, the most simple definition is about strengthening local communities through arts and culture. Creative placemaking is when arts, culture, and design activities are deliberately integrated into efforts that strengthen communities. A successful Our Town project ultimately lays the groundwork for systemic change that sustains the integration of arts, culture, and design into local strategies. There are some additional requirements for an Our Town application. Eligibility does require a partnership between a nonprofit and a local government. Grants range from $25,000 to $150,000, and there is, again, a one-to-one cost share match. So our largest flagship program is Grants for Arts Projects. It's typically what people think of when they think of an NEA award. Applications are submitted to one of our artistic disciplines, and the deadlines are in February and July of each year. Funding is available for all stages of the artistic process, and that can include creation, presentation and exhibition, arts education and enrichment, as well as services to the field, such as conferences or professional development. Again, there is a one-to-one cost share match requirement. These awards range from $10,000 to $100,000, and the project timeline can be for up to 2 years. So keep that in mind if you're unsure whether the award range works for your organization's budget. We offer 2 types of research awards, one in the social and behavioral sciences and another examining the value and impact of the arts. If you are a research organization, you're interested, we have a really wonderful Office of Research and Analysis, and we'd love to receive your application. So in addition to events like this one, we really have a great website for applicant resources. We typically have a number of events, sometimes artistic discipline specific, around our different deadlines. There are webinars, and we also always host just general office hours in which you can just drop by, listen in, ask questions, get to know people in your sector, and also NEA staff. We're always available. As I always joke, all of our email addresses are almost too easy to find. I'll put mine in the chat, but on our website, arts.gov, you can find discipline-specific staff, and I'm always happy to connect you with the right person at the NEA as well. And you can also take a look at sample project narratives and parts of applications that have been successful with us in the past. You're also always eligible, if you're not successful when applying with the NEA, to get in touch with us, schedule a call, and you can get panel feedback, the panel which reviewed your application, and understand where the panelists might think that you were strongest and where they might have had questions. So this slide is really just encouraging folks to serve on a panel. It gives you the opportunity to see the other side of the process. We've heard from organizations that perhaps weren't successful in the past, decided to serve on a panel, kind of understand how a panel views an application. The panels are made up of experts in the field and also one layperson. It's really just encourage you to check out that opportunity. We're required by Congress, the panels are required by Congress to review an application based on artistic excellence and artistic merit. We understand that means different things to different people in different communities. So if you think that your community or artistic discipline isn't represented in that process, really encourage you to consider applying to be a panelist with us. So just to wrap up, really encourage you to stay in touch, whether it's emailing me directly or just following what we're up to at the NEA. We have a general newsletter as well as a range of artistic discipline specific newsletters. I think my colleagues really do a good job of not spamming folks and just getting out the most important information. So whether it's with me or some of my colleagues or through the Congressman's office, looking forward to staying in touch and getting to your questions at the end of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to hand it over to Allison.
Well, I am Allison, Director of Congressional Affairs at NEH. I just want to start off by saying thank you to Representative Veasey and his staff for putting on today's webinar. I think it's great that you're all here to learn a little bit more about NEH and a lot of the grant offerings that we have. I usually like to preface my remarks by saying, unlike the NEA, NEH has many, many, many grant lines. So today's presentation is going to be more of an overview of the types of projects that we fund, as well as the categories of audience that we serve, rather than a grant by grant line examination. So generally the first question I get when I tell people what I do is, what are the humanities? And the NEH founding legislation uses a lot of words to describe it, which are listed on this slide. But I really do think the best way to demonstrate the humanities is through the projects that we fund, from museum exhibits to podcasts to books to teacher training and so much more. And honestly, I think this quote by Toni Morrison of "The humanities are the examined life of our nation" is a really wonderful way to think about the humanities. It's the life of our nation, the good, the bad, the difficult, and the beautiful, and we fund all of it. So a few takeaways from today: everything that I'm going to tell you in one way or the other is on our website, www.neh.gov. Our grant programs really are quite competitive, but you'll never get a grant if you do not apply. I will talk you through where to find all the information you need to apply, and our notice of funding opportunity. The guidelines are on our website for each of our different grant lines, and they will give you all of the ins and outs of how to apply, as well as who to reach out to if you have specific questions. But like Ben, I stand at the ready to put you in touch with program officers that might be able to answer specific questions you have about your specific project and the best grant for you to apply for. I will, at the end of my remarks, drop my email in the chat. Our program officers really are the best resource we have. They know everything about the grants, and they know all of the details that you need in order to put together the best application possible. So we actually have two different types of funding. We fund institutions, and like the NEA, our institutional eligibility, the main takeaway is that you need to be a 501c3 nonprofit. We also fund institutions of higher education. We fund city and tribal governments. We also have several grants that are encouraging of collaboration between different organizations. The lead applicant for those does need to be a US-based institution. We also have a number of grants through our Division of Research for individuals. You can be an institutionally affiliated individual or an independent scholar with a history of publication. But the main thing is you need to be a US citizen. Because we do have so many grant lines, we offer grants as small as $6,000 and as large as $1 million. So you could feel very easily overwhelmed when trying to find the right program for your project. But one way I like to think about the grant is thinking about the audience for your work, and then look to the grants from the appropriate divisions. If you're serving the general public, like museum visitors or folks watching documentaries, you should look to our Division of Public Programs. If you're an institution and you have a collection and you're looking to improve access to that collection for visitors or researchers, you want to start out with the Division of Preservation and Access. If you're an institute of higher education and you're looking to build out a new humanities-based minor or major or courses, or else you want to put together seminars for K through 12 individuals, you're going to look for our Division of Education. And if you are a writer or a researcher looking to write a book, you're going to look for our Division of Research. Digital humanities is really geared towards cutting edge technologies in the humanities. And our challenge programs serve institutions and city and tribal governments. Our challenge programs are also our only division that has a matching requirement for our grants. Most of NEH's grants are just money straight to you rather than require a match. So on our website, you'll see we have all of the grant programs and a lot of other information. You'll see if you go to our homepage, the main picture does change, but the outline remains the same. And you'll see there at the right, grants. And if you click on the grants, you'll be able to pull up a list of all of our divisions and offices within NEH. There's several different ways to access the information. This is just one of the ways. And if you click on divisions and offices, you'll see that we pull up all of the various divisions and offices: digital humanities, education, preservation. One additional office I failed to mention is our federal and state partnership. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but we have 56 state and jurisdictional councils throughout the country, including Humanities Texas. 40% of our funding goes direct out the door towards the state and jurisdictional councils. So, for example, Humanities Texas receives federal dollars and has grant opportunities at the state level. So they are also a really good resource to look for potential funding opportunities. And then under each of our divisions and offices, on the right side of their page, you'll see all of the related grant lines within that division and office. If you click on for example, here we have the dangers and opportunities of technology under our Office of Digital Office of Digital Humanities. And this is basically where you're going to find all the information you could ever want about applying for our DOT program. On the right side, you'll see the relevant maximum award amount, who's eligible to apply, what your expected output is, and really the most important part, our deadlines. If you scroll down our page, you'll find all sorts of tips, and oftentimes there's a pre-recorded webinar to help walk you through the grant as well as how to apply. Scrolling down further, you'll find everything you need to know in the application package, including sample application narratives from previously successful applicants that will help you craft your application. And then all the way at the very bottom, you'll see the funding statistics for our programs. The 15% funding ratio is pretty average across the agency. It can be daunting, but again, I encourage you to reach out. If you have a idea, if you have a project that you're looking for funding, and I can put you in touch with our program officers that can help you build the best application possible. Our review process goes through outside review panels. We then go through staff recommendations. We have a national council that reviews, and then we finally have the chair's decision. We have council meetings 3 times a year, and we make grant notifications shortly thereafter. But our review panels are really the heart of how NEH determines who receives grants. These are outside experts in their field and really do make the concerted effort to talk through each of the applications. They look at them critically to make sure that the best of the best are funded. A few application tips, just generally, I'm not going to read through all of them. We'll make sure that you have these slides afterwards. But I will say one thing that the NEH does offer is often a draft deadline for an application prior to a final deadline. This is a chance for you to send in basically a first draft of your application, and a program officer will review it and get back to you and let you know where strengthening may need to happen in order to put together the best application. This is a really good opportunity to not just blindly submit a final application, but really work with a program officer to put the best application forward. If you do get turned down, don't get discouraged. We make all of our reviewers' comments available after the fact, and you can see where you might want to strengthen your application for the next time that you apply. You should also always reach out to a program officer and work with them if you have questions or need additional feedback, and please always reapply. We're also looking for panelists. You'll see here a form to sign up. You'll be able to see what folks are looking for, and you'll be able to determine what makes the best application. And it'll only help you in your attempts later on with your own applications. Please do stay in touch. I will drop my email into the chat. We also have newsletters that describe all of the programs we have coming up, deadlines, and you can follow us on social media. So I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. We're going to move on to Gary Gibbs with the Texas Commission on the Arts. And Gary, give me 1 second as I pull up the presentation.
So thank you to the Congressman's office and all of you who are joining us today. I looked in the participants list, and some of you I actually know, and because we have lots of grants in the Congressman's district. And so a lot of the information that I prepared today is basically if you've never interacted with Texas Commission on the Arts. Many of you have and are aware of what we have to offer. But basically, I would say anyone that was wanting to begin that process should go to accounts@arts.texas.gov and provide some information to us, and we'll be in contact with you. We're a very customer service friendly agency. That's not always the case with all government agencies, but our agency is very much focused on providing you, the field, with all the support that you need. So we will literally hold your hand as you go through an application process, help you determine whatever you're eligible for, and guide you all the way through that process. And just as Allison said, any application that you want to submit to us, if you give us a draft 2 weeks beforehand, a program administrator will review that and give you feedback on that particular proposal. We work primarily with 501c3 nonprofit and governmental entities. These are folks that any nonprofit, doesn't have to just be an arts organization. We have one grant program that is non-competitive. It allows you to bring in artists from our pre-curated Texas touring roster to your own venue in your community, and you negotiate the fee with the artist, and we'll pay up to 50% of that artist's fee. It's our most pardon me, the allergies in Austin are extremely bad today, and I'm experiencing that. This is our most simple program. This is one that a school can use, a library can use to bring in an artist, or a community center, any kind of nonprofit. We accept applications 4 times a year for this program. So I'm going to talk a little bit of what we call Arts Respond Project grants. And these are grants that address the priorities of Texas state government. And they may be what you would expect them to be: education, economic development, health and human services, natural resources and agriculture, and public safety and criminal justice. So these are grants that arts organizations who have a budget level at a certain level can apply for, where they use the arts to address these different issues that are of importance to state government and our elected officials in the state. So it demonstrates how the arts are not just confined to the museum or to the theater, but they actually expand into our communities in every aspect. You find them in schools, in senior centers, in criminal justice facilities, in rural parts of the state. The impetus of this grant program is to demonstrate to elected officials how broad spread the arts are and how vital they are to our quality of life in the state. You can apply twice a year for these grants, and the only difference is you have to choose a different priority area for each application. This next grant is called Arts Create. And this is when I first came to the agency several years ago. We polled the field and said, what is the most crucial type of funding you're looking for. And as you would expect, it came back general operating support. I know that the Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, is unable to support that, but we are, and we do that through a program called Arts Create. But that's the operational support grant that we provide for organizations, where you tell us you give us an application that describes all of the work that you do. Again, it's adjudicated by panelists from the field. They score it, they make recommendations, and then based on those recommendations, you're funded, and we guarantee that funding for 2 years. So you know that you'll get the exact same amount for 2 years, because Texas has a biennial legislative session. We know what our budget is for 2 years, so we're able to guarantee you 2 years income for that particular program. There is not an Arts Create grant for budgets under $50,000. No, I'm sorry, there's not. The last major program that we have, and this is actually the largest grants that we have, is our Cultural District Project grants, where your organization has to be within a cultural district. You have to qualify at a budget level, and then you can apply for grants that can support capital expenses, high quality artistic programming, management, marketing. It's a tourism program, and the grants can go up to $250,000. So what I want to encourage all of you to do, if you have an interest in applying to TCA, is to just give us a call. Like I said, we're a very friendly agency that wants to assist you. Give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be in touch and go over all the possibilities that are available to you. The other, just a few other little tips. Please be aware that in order to apply for our grants and also the National Endowment for the Arts and National Endowment for the Humanities, you're going to need to have what is called a SAM UEI number. And this is a federal identifying number that's required on all grant applications. It's not necessarily an easy process to go through to get one of those. Our staff, we have people on our staff that are trained to help you secure that SAM UEI. So that's another notice. I also want to reinforce what Allison said. There's a sister organization here based in Austin that's statewide called Humanities Texas that also offers grant opportunities for not only humanities organizations, but also arts organizations that have humanities programming. So I urge you to look at them. And then the other thing I want to mention is that because you are a citizen of Texas, and Texas Commission on the Arts pays dues to the Mid-America Arts Alliance, which is an organization, a regional arts organization based in Kansas City, Missouri, and it includes Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, and Texas. You are eligible for their grant programs as well. So I can't speak on their behalf, but you should check out the Mid-America Arts Alliance for grant opportunities there as well. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions with my other colleagues. Thanks for being here.
So if anybody has any questions, you can either post them in the chat or raise your hand. We'll try to get to you. I know that we have one question already. Open up the chat. And it says, is there any Arts Create grant for small organizations with verified budgets under 50,000? From Carolyn West.
That was for me, and we do not have that. No, the answer is no. Project grants, they're eligible for project grants, but not operational support grants.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions for each of or for any of the panelists?
A verified budget, I think that's for me too. A verified budget, we go to the IRS, and so you have to file with the IRS so we can see your budgets there. You can no longer do the postcard. You have to do the short version of the IRS filing.
Another question that we have is, what was the name of the Mid-America Arts?
Mid-America Arts Alliance.
Alliance, okay.
Yeah.
Just to emphasize, so thanks, Gary, for bringing that up. Mid-America Arts Alliance is one of the 6 regional arts organizations that encompasses Texas, and just be mindful of the fact that there are federal funds, as Gary emphasized, at the regional, state, and local level.
Okay, so one more question from Dr. Tammy Smithers. What about funding organizations that have not yet opened, but do have some programming that has begun? Would this type of organization be eligible for federal arts funding?
So I can speak. At the National Endowment for the Arts, we do require 3 years of arts programming history from the organization. So if there was a new organization, they would not at this time be eligible for NEA funding. I'm not sure, Gary, if you have opportunities available for federal funds at the state level.
No, we require at least 2 years of operations. And also with a arts mission.
I know for this particular project, there's some cultural programming as well. Allison, can you speak to whether or not there's any opportunities there, or where you might see some potential collaboration?
I'm certainly not going to say no. I would need to know more about what this looks like and what the project is that is looking to be funded. We don't have that sort of year requirement in terms of humanities funding. So National Juneteenth Museum, I see. So it's in development right now with programming that started. I think there is certainly a potential. I don't want to say no. And if you drop me a line, I can put you in touch with my guess is it'll be our public programs staff that can help walk you through. And I'll also in the chat drop in Humanities Texas information as well. And they may have opportunities as well.
So another question from Linda Gray, are the local federal art grants through the cities in the state of Texas?
I would have to check. I don't have a full list of local arts agencies in the state, but I would imagine, Gary, maybe you can help me out. I imagine there are a number of local arts agencies that have, so a local arts agency, when applying with the NEA, can do so for their own artistic programming or for the ability to re-grant funds. Only those regional arts organizations, state arts agencies, and local arts agencies are eligible for re-granting. I'd imagine there are a number in the state. But if you want to get in touch, let me know where you're from, or Gary, if you have a better sense of the geography, happy for you to chime in.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many local arts agencies in Texas receive NEA funds. But I would say that your local arts agency in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, both Fort Worth and Dallas, they have a larger budget than the state of Texas does. So because of their ability to use hotel occupancy tax, it's a different case in Fort Worth, I'm aware, but in Dallas for sure, the use of hotel occupancy tax to fund the arts, they have, and that's the great place to start, is with your local arts agency when you're seeking funding, and then kind of move up the chain to the state and then the federal, so forth and so on. So I hope that's helpful. And also typically, for instance, when you apply to our grant programs, we may fund you with state dollars or with federal dollars, but it's not an isolated pot that you apply for, say, I want federal dollars rather than state dollars. We let you know which dollars we're using. There's different reporting requirements for them, but that's typically the way it works.
So one other question, small organizations are often the frontline servicing marginalized groups. Their impact can be even greater with resources. What is the reasoning for not funding small organizations with more than a decade of successful operations?
So I won't speak on Gary or Allison's behalf, but I would assume that it's part of all of our missions to reach those small volunteer-run organizations, and certainly those that are reaching, as Carolyn says in the chat, marginalized communities. As mentioned, we have our Challenge America program, which is specifically focused on organizations who they themselves identify as underserved or are serving underserved communities. And it's a smaller dollar award, flat $10,000 award, lots of technical assistance. So I'm not sure if this is referencing a specific experience with one of the organizations on the presentation, but certainly we stand at the ready to work with those smaller organizations who are trying to navigate the federal application process, and really why we're excited to be presenting today.
So there's a question from Brian Diaz. If we had been operating as an individual artist on the local level, but are about to start a nonprofit, do we need to wait 3 more years to apply for these grants?
So the organization itself does require that 3 years of arts programming history. There is no requirement for how long the organization needs to be a federally registered 501c3. So again, if the organization pre-exists, but the application for federal registration, your nonprofit status hasn't come in, but we do require the organization has 3 years of arts programming history. Again, that's just it's really a risk analysis question on making sure that we're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And just seeing in the chat, it's Challenge America is the name, and we'll make sure that the information about that program is in my presentation, and so you'll have that in the slides.
So as we get other questions, I think this is related to you, Gary, there was in your presentation a section that talked about grants that are for cultural benefit, but that also have like economic expectation of economic development and things like that. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Were these the project grants, Arts Respond projects that address the priorities of state government? Is that what the question is referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, so for instance, if an arts organization, one of the areas is education. So if they have a program that works in school during the school hours, is focused on the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, that would be eligible for support in that program. If they are going to do an exhibit focused on the environment using natural materials, we could fund that through the Arts Respond to Natural Resources and Agriculture. So those are the types of projects. These are project-based things that impact these different areas that typically that reside in some place else in state government. But showing again, which is the chairman's of the endowments move right now, is to show how the arts truly impact every aspect of our lives.
So as we get other questions, are there common barriers that you all see for organizations when they apply? And I'm thinking about, sometimes maybe there's the barriers of maybe they don't have the 3 years or things like that. But is there other things that you all commonly see as things that disqualify folks from these applications that maybe some of our constituents could be mindful of?
I will say from NEH's perspective, I have had the opportunity to sit in on a number of our panelists' discussions over grants. And one of the bigger knocks, if you get through the initial, you meet the page limit. If it says PDF, don't send us Word, send us PDF, is not actually articulating enough the humanities impact. there's an assumption a lot of the time that just the program itself will state the humanities-based impact. That is not the case. Tell us how it impacts the humanities, then tell us again, and then tell us again. The panelists will often find themselves sometimes trying to read between the lines, and they are not supposed to read through the lines, and the program officer will not allow them to do that. So especially for organizations that have theater or arts, whatever in the title of your organization, that does not discount you. Just make the case of why the humanities is involved. And we can put you in touch with a program officer again and use the draft deadline for your application to really get the best use of your time to put together the best application.
Ben and Gary, do you all have a response to that?
I'll offer this. One of the biggest issues that we find with new grantees in particular, and new applicants, is not availing themselves of the opportunity to have us review your grant before you submit it and give you some pointers, especially in the area of budget. I see lots of problems when applicants trying to create their budget. For instance, they have an operating budget of $100,000 for their entire organization, and they submit a project grant that has a budget of $350,000. Well, it's just not realistic. It's not, that is not good business, so to speak. So, you know, make sure you're being realistic and also know the reality of what size grant you might be eligible for. We don't, you know, the biggest grant we give is $250,000. So it's unreasonable to expect that you would get $1 million from us. You might get $1 million from the Endowment for the Humanities, but you can't get that at TCA, unfortunately. I wish.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Thanks, Gary, for bringing that up. We see the same thing at the National Endowment for the Arts. I think when panel reviews applications, they want to make sure that this work is going to happen, right? They believe in the artistic discipline. And so, right, so if you come in and there's no knock against a smaller volunteer-run organization, but I think to be realistic about what's in the realm of the possible makes a lot of sense, because again, we want to see this work come to fruition. I think the one thing that I'll touch on, and it's not necessarily in the application itself, but it's just the technical hiccups and its amount of time that it takes to submit an application for federal funds. We are very mindful of the fact that it takes a significant amount of time, and you're relying on an online portal that is not controlled by the NEA, is not controlled by the NEH. It is the same for all federal funding applications. So just make sure, even if the deadline is far into the future, make sure that you're registered, make sure that you have all that stuff taken care of. Because I think the worst thing that we hear is when folks are waiting till maybe the last minute and their internet goes down. Something like life happens, right? So we just want to make sure it's very difficult. It's a very competitive process. The worst thing would be if you're not getting access to federal funds because of something out of your control. So definitely just get started, take a look at those deadlines and get started as soon as possible.
So we have another question from Carolyn. It says, speaking of budgets, should the amount being requested be included?
So for the NEA, you would request a specific dollar amount for grants for arts projects, which is a range. The only program that isn't a range is the Challenge America program that I mentioned. That's a flat $10,000 award. For other grant applications, you would apply for a specific dollar amount. And then the NEA is able to give you whether either fully fund the application or provide some amount of funds below the number at which you requested, but certainly you would apply for a certain dollar amount at the NEA.
That's also true for the NEH. We have a few flat grants, but for most of them, you'll need to, and there'll be a section in the application that highlights where you put in how much you're requesting.
Yes, Carolyn, in the budget form that you have to fill out, there will be a line there saying what your request is.
Okay, so we talked about some of the barriers. Is there things that organizations need to be thinking of, right? So I think we often find that organizations that are maybe small are applying to these big grants that they may not be able to fulfill, or maybe the process is lengthy and competitive. Is there a better way for maybe smaller organizations to apply to specific type of grants and then kind of grow from there and grow in their capacity? What are y'all's recommendations on that as organizations continue to grow?
Yeah, I think Gary, you're unmuting, so I was going to emphasize what you said, which, starting at local, state, regional level. But Gary, please.
No, I would say if you're a small organization and you want to apply to the National Endowment for the Arts, start with the Challenge America program. It is the one that's most accessible, and you have the biggest chance of getting awarded a grant in that program. So in our grants, as long as you qualify at the budget level and you're good with the Secretary of State and you have your IRS letter of determination, all of those kind of bureaucratic things, you're eligible to apply to any of our programs that we have.
Small organizations are absolutely, we want to reach small volunteer-run organizations, in the Congressman district, absolutely eligible. It's just a matter of where we want to see you and put you in a position to succeed. So it's just, I think Gary's recommendation, and I would strongly agree, is just where we think a smaller organization, an organization that perhaps hasn't applied for federal funds, where that organization might be successful, but absolutely eligible to apply for funding with us or at the regional, state, or local level.
Mr. Nopal, back to what you were saying, one of the biggest challenges for small organizations is doing the match, the one-for-one match, which the NEA requires and TCA requires. I heard Allison say the NEH does not require that match, but that can sometimes be a challenge for small organizations.
Just in regards to the match requirement, we don't want that to be a barrier to entry. The reason that match is there is, again, I think on one hand, to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars, but how do we also generate additional resources for arts and culture organizations? And I think one way to do that is through that cost share match. But we don't want it to be a barrier. So if you have questions about it, you don't need to, in your application process, you don't need to outline the source of that match. It's really through the grants management process rather than at the application stage.
So I'm assuming that a lot of these grants come with specific, I don't want to say strings, but specific requirements and reporting, right? Is there issues that you all often encounter with folks that apply and maybe are thinking of reapplying? They don't maybe do a good job in the reporting process, or there's things that they could have done better. Is there things like that on the reporting process that you all often see that maybe doesn't help them qualify to reapply? Does that make sense?
Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
I was going to say for us and the reporting requirement for us is it's not as onerous as you might think. Our reports are more questionnaires of how did you do with the money? What did you do with the money? Do you have a product that came out of it? And we have a whole Office of Grants Management that is specifically set up to help with complying with the grants requirements. They need you to comply with the grants requirements. So there isn't really going to be the option to not fulfill the reporting requirements, and they'll let you know if they need more information. They are also people. They are reachable people. We often, for many of our grant lines, have project director meetings right after the grants are awarded, and we'll bring on the grants management team and my office will be there and we'll talk about how to talk about your project and how to comply with the requirements of the grant so that you don't fall afoul and you're not, you don't get dinged moving forward. But I wouldn't say that that is in itself a huge issue in terms of applying again in the future.
And I think similarly at the NEA, you do have to be in good standing with the NEA when applying. So that is, meeting those reporting requirements. Our Office of Grants Management, the unsung heroes here at the NEA, they're not looking to trip you up. They want you to be successful. They work very hard. If an organization is struggling and meeting some of its requirements, they work very closely with you. And it is often, some of the organizations that are new to applying for federal funds do need that extra attention. But again, they're not looking, you're not, nitpicking. They want to see you succeed. They want to see you have access to these funds. It is just based on federal regulation requirements that we have to meet.
So I would just add to use good financial management practices. In other words, if it's a project that you're reporting on, make sure all the expenses are well documented. Don't use cash. Don't pay people in cash. Don't pay for goods in cash. We have to be able, because we are audited by the state auditor, we have to show. So there's layers of checks and balances, shall we say. So just make sure you use good business practices.
Okay, so we'll take this last question. It is from Brian. It says, to get a SAM ID, where do we start? Do people need to have been born in the US? How does the legal status of an artist affect an application? I'm thinking this might be for DACA students as well, or folks like that.
So I think this goes back to just getting started early and the ability for NEA, NEH, or any federal agency to kind of weigh in on that process. We have the ability to get in touch with grants.gov and the folks that manage those portals, but we don't have the ability to kind of manage the back end or unfortunately provide any customer service in that regard. I have heard from colleagues and from people applying that they do have pretty good, I think there's an online chat function. There are people who will pick up the phone over there, certainly get in touch. I mean, I think too, if I may, Arnulfo, like this is a good reason to get in touch with your congressman's office, right? If you have an issue with grants.gov, getting that SAM ID, we're happy to help at the NEA, if I may, Allison, at the NEH. But really, I think hearing from a member of Congress's office goes a long way when it comes to something like that, if that's okay, Veasey friends.
Yeah, and we can help Brian and really anybody that's joining us today. We can help and kind of guide you through that process. And we are working on a grants packet that will lead you through a lot of that. So let's see. So I want to thank you all, Allison, Ben, Gary, for joining us. Thank you for making time. I know that we had asked you for a bit more time, thinking that we were going to have a bit more questions. But we're really grateful for you all joining us today. I'm going to hand it over to Melissa, who is going to give us just a couple of words before we close. But again, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for everyone who tuned in. I just want to reiterate that you all will be receiving the information on the presentations as well as the recording to your email. And again, feel free to connect with us, reach out. We'll also send along the emails that were included in the chat so that we can continue to collaborate on ways that we can find funding for you all. I know a lot of times you all have opportunities that we didn't necessarily think that are kind of niche, that fit projects in the district and get funding for places. The congressman also often tells a story about how he got, when he was a field director, or a field representative, got funding for the Goodwill through a grant that he never anticipated would fit together with that project, but it did. And we were able to keep one of those Goodwills open. So we do have a list of grants when they come our way. we share them with whoever's on our grants list. And so be looking out for that information from us. And then also make sure you sign up for those newsletters, because those newsletters sometimes have information that we don't have, or we might be getting that information and don't necessarily always get to go through the whole newsletter. So make sure you sign up for those newsletters so that you can see those new grant opportunities that are coming your way. And again, thank you so much. Please feel free to reach out if we can be of any assistance. We're always happy to help.
Thanks all.
Thanks everyone. Appreciate it.